Today, I'm going to share with you how to read music 10 times faster using this simple daily practice routine. I'm going to start out by explaining how this routine works, and then I'm going to put your skills to the ultimate test because we're going to go through the routine together, and I'm going to see if you can find the answers before I do. The first thing you want to do is practice reading notes on the staff, and here's exactly how you want to approach that. First, you want to practice 10 examples on the treble clef. Secondly, you want to practice 10 examples just on the bass clef. And then you want to round out this section with 10 examples on the grand staff, which is when you put both clefs together at the same time. Just finding the correct note isn't good enough. What I want you to do is I want you to find the note name and then also find it on the piano. When practicing these at first, give yourself 10 seconds to answer each one. Once you feel like you're getting all the answers correct, then challenge yourself by giving yourself only 5 seconds to answer each one. And then once you can do that, really challenge yourself with only 3 seconds to answer each note. You can practice note reading by getting a set of handy flashcards on Amazon or the store of your choice. But there's another great way to practice your notes, and that is by going to musictheory.net and clicking on the note identification exercise. And if you don't know how to read notes on the staff, I'm going to link you to a lesson at the very end. Interval practice is next. Now, what even is an interval? Well, an interval is the distance between two notes. So if I have a C and then I play an E, that's a third. 1, 2, 3. If I have a C and then I have an A, that is a sixth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And by becoming familiar with our intervals, both on the piano and how it translates into the sheet music, we can use that to read music much faster. Here is what a second looks like on the staff, on the bass clef. It's going to look the same on the treble clef or no matter where it appears on the staff. And you know it's a second right away because these two are so close together that they have to kind of move to the side of one another. Whereas all the other intervals that are larger do not do that. See how they stack up and down? This is the only one where if they're played at the same time, they're so close, you gotta, put them side to side. Now, seconds, which is an even number interval, right? Seconds, fourths, sixths, and eighths, also called an octave. These all, are you listening? This is very important. These all, even number intervals, do not match. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means that if one of them is on a space, the other one is on a line. So that's what it means by they don't match. It doesn't matter whether the first one starts on a line or a space. It's the same thing. So is this an even number interval? And the answer is yes, because they don't match. As for the exact even number interval that it is, it really depends on how far away it is. Like I said, seconds that close. And then fourth, you just have a little bit of a gap in between. You have sixth, and then an octave is almost the entire, let me move these down to A's and I'll show you. It's almost, or G's rather, this is almost the entire staff. So you can kind of tell by how far apart they are. Odd number intervals like thirds, fifths, and sevenths, they do what? They match. So remember, odd number intervals match. Even number intervals don't match. So it might be kind of opposite of what you think. You might think even, they match. No, even they do not match on the sheet music. So use that wisely because this is really the key to reading intervals super duper quickly. And of course, I want you to practice intervals. How many do you want to practice each time? 10 at least. Do 10 examples when you are practicing all of this other stuff. Once again, musictheory.net has you covered with practicing intervals. And of course, we're going to practice these together towards the end of the lesson. And remember, I'm going to challenge you, so I hope that you are ready. The next thing you want to practice is ledger lines. So what is a ledger line anyway? Well, ledger lines are these lines that we add to the music when we're going high up or far below the staff, really so we can keep track and kind of count to see what note that we're supposed to play. Without the ledger lines, it would be a total guessing game. A lot of people don't know this, but there are simple rules to get your ledger lines super fast so you don't have to count down and figure out what those notes are every time. And there's two rules to this. They apply to both the treble clef and the bass clef, but we're going to be taking a look at the bass clef first. The rule number one, are you ready for it, is the spaces of a clef are equal to the lines going down below the clef in reverse order. So if this is A, C, E, G, this is A, C, E, G. You just got to make sure that you're going from the bottom to the top, or you go in reverse order because we are starting from the top note and then going down. Okay, here's part two of that same ledger line rule. Are you ready for it? The spaces of a staff, A, C, E, G, are equal to the lines going up off the staff. And now because we are going from the bottom note counting up, we don't have to worry about that reverse order nonsense. So if this one from bottom to top is A, C, E, G, this from bottom to the top is also A, C, E, G. It's just an octave higher on the piano than where it is, down there. Are you ready for more ledger line rules? Well, there's only one more, although there is two parts to it. The lines of a clef, it doesn't matter whether it's treble or bass. Just remember that treble clef has different lines. Treble clef lines are E, G, B, D, F, and these lines are G, B, D, F, A. So the lines of a clef are equal to the spaces going up the clef from the top space. So if this is G, B, D, F, A from the bottom to the top, these notes, guess what, are G, B, D, F, A. So by using this trick, instead of like spending all afternoon counting, trying to figure out what that top note is, I know by the ledger line rule that it's A. So I told you all about ledger lines, and you're probably wondering, how many do I have to practice? Well, here it is. I want you to practice 20 ledger line notes per day. It's more than the ones doing hand separate or clef separate. And the reasoning behind that is that these ledger lines are ones that give students a lot more trouble, so they're going to need a lot more practice. And if you want to practice your ledger lines, you go to the same note identification exercise on musictheory.net. You have to make sure that you click this little gear right here and select just the ledger line notes. Like that. Another thing that you absolutely have to practice identifying on the sheet music are chords. Let me give you a real quick rundown of triads and seventh chords so that you can look at them and read them from sight. The first type of chord I want you to be aware of is a triad, which is a 3-note chord. And for this lesson, there's many types of triads, but that's not part of this lesson or in the scope of this lesson. What's in the scope of this lesson is knowing a triad is a 3-note chord and being able to see it on the sheet music right there. Now, here's the thing, is triads don't always appear in what we call root position, meaning that the name of the chord is on the very bottom, C. So this is a C major chord. However, you could have C major chords in different orientations, but we don't call them orientations. We call them inversions. So we have C major with C on the bottom. We have first inversion now with the root note on the top. So basically what we did is we took our root position, we kept these two notes here, and then we moved the bottom note up an octave. That's how you invert. Bottom note up an octave, remember that. So there is first inversion. You can tell a chord is in first inversion right away by this one thing, and that there is a larger space towards the top end of the chord. Remember that with root position, they were evenly stacked. There is no spacing in there because it's stacked like a snowman, and that's how you know there's a root position chord, by the way. So there's first inversion, bigger space at the top. Here's second inversion. Once again, we move the bottom note to the top, and we have second inversion. It's still a C major chord, but the root is in the middle now. And you know it's a second inversion chord right away by the way it looks, because there is a larger space towards the bottom of the chord this time, and it matches up with the piano as well. Like I said, there are many types of triads, but all you have to know for this lesson is what a triad is. And this one has 4 chords: do you think this is called a quad chord? Well, that would make sense, right? By the naming conventions, a triad, triceratops, you know, a quadriceps, or I don't know, like a four-wheeler, a quad would have four wheels. Well, like always with music, logic is kind of out the window. It is called a seventh chord, but there still is some logic involved. And that is because the seventh chord gets its name from the distance between the bottom note and the top note. Remember when I was talking about intervals before? Well, these notes are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is a seventh apart, and that's where it gets its name from. So triad is named because it has 3 notes, and this one is called a seventh because of a different reasons. I don't know why. I just think it's really funny that they do that. Anyway, you can identify a seventh right away because it's 4 stacked notes. It's a larger snowman now, I guess you could say. And of course, there are inversions to this. Here is first inversion. You can see it because there's a second at the top of the chord between the B and the C. And there's also a little bit of space in between there in the middle of the chord. So is there another inversion? Of course there is. So there is root position, first inversion, second inversion, just like with the triad. However, because we have one more note, we actually have a third inversion as well. By the way, you notice this is in second inversion because you have a stacked third on the top between the C and the E. Remember, odd intervals do match, so a third. And then there's also a little bit of a space, but towards the bottom. And then there's one more inversion, like I said. And that is third inversion. And you know third inversion right away when you see it? Because you see that second at the bottom. See how they're stacked side by side? That's how we know it's a second. And then you just have stacked thirds after that. Of course, there are many types of seventh chords, but that's for another lesson. All I want you to know is what a triad looks like, what the inversions look like, and then what a seventh chord looks like, and those inversions. And that will bring you the biggest benefit when it comes to reading music. Knowing the nitty-gritty behind chords does help as well, but this is a great starting point. Now you're asking, Tim, do I need to practice my chords when it comes to note reading? The answer is, of course you do. And here's how I recommend you do it. Remember that website I told you about, musictheory.net, that I told you about 7 minutes ago? Well, there's a chord identification thing too. So I want to make sure that when you do this though, that you hit this gear up here and make sure that you have everything selected. So I recommend you select level 1. You only have 2 chords selected, the major triad and the major seventh. So those are the only ones you know so far. Make sure it's a range you're comfortable with, although you should be able to identify these no matter what. Let's go to try. Okay, now looking at this, do you think this is a triad or seventh? It's clearly a seventh, right? Triad or seventh? Triad. Boom. And that's where I want you to start. Triad or seventh? Triad. And it is in what inversion? It is in first inversion because there's a grouping towards the top. So make sure to say the inversion. You may even be able to select it here. Yes, inversions. I'm not sure why it doesn't have that as part of the thing you can select, but you know you can at least start with the triads versus seventh chords and then figure out the inversions from there. After chords, you're going to want to practice key signature identification. A key signature usually appears in the beginning of a section of music or in the beginning of a whole piece, and it tells you what notes are sharped or flatted throughout a piece of music. So say we have this one here, we have one sharp there. If I had a note right where that sharp is, it would be the top line of the treble clef. Remember, E, G, B, D, F is the name of that note. And what that's telling you now is that all Fs in the whole piece, no matter what, are sharped now, unless they tell you otherwise with like a natural. So say I have this string of notes. If there was no key signature here, or say we're in the key of C with no sharps, no flats, this would be played like this. But however, since we have a sharp in the key signature, F sharp, remember I said all Fs are sharp. It doesn't matter what line or space it happens on. So even though this second note here isn't on the same line the sharp is, it's still sharped anyway. Just like that. Same thing goes with the bass clef. It's just on a line lower than what the treble clef is, and the only reason that is because the treble clef lines and spaces are a little bit different. Now, this treble clef, or bass clef, excuse me, from bottom to the top is G, B, D, F, which places F on this line right below that. But trust me that it doesn't matter. It's just telling you that all Fs, it doesn't matter what line or space, what clef, even if it's on a ledger line, they will be sharp. Now, the weird thing I want to tell you is when you have one sharp in the key signature, the sharp is F sharp. However, the key that you're in, is that F sharp? No, you would think so, right? That's what logic would tell you maybe, but the key is actually G. So now what I'm going to tell you or teach you is how do you figure out, if you're given a certain number of sharps, how do you figure out what the actual key name is if it doesn't necessarily correlate to what notes are sharp or flat? Well, say we have the key signature with 3 sharps, right? And these 3 sharps are F, C, and G. So what that tells us is that every F, every C, and every G in the whole piece are going to be sharps no matter what, unless they give you a natural or something. Now, we have 3 sharps, F, C, and G. Is the name of this key G? No, that would make way too much sense. What it is, though, is actually the key of A. And I mean, like, how did you figure that out? Well, here's how. So for sharps, this only works for sharps. You go to the sharp all the way to the right. F, C, and then G is the last one. You find G sharp on the piano, right? And then you just go up to the very next note, A, and that's your answer. So you go up to the last sharp, you play that sharp, you go up 1/2 step. Let's try one more example with sharps. Okay, we have 5 sharps now. If you drew a note on each of those sharps where they're located, you'd have the notes from left to right, F, C, G, D, and the last one is A sharp. Now, is the name of the key A sharp? No, but all you have to do is play A sharp, go up a 1/2 step, and it tells you that the key that you are in is the key of B. So always remember, it only works with sharp keys. There's another one with flats. With sharps, you go to the sharp all the way to the right, you find it on the piano, and then you go up 1/2 step, and that's your answer. Okay, now we're changing to a key signature with 2 flats from this point forward. Now, if you had a flat where that first line is, that would be a B, right? Because remember, every good boy, or B. So one of our flats is B. If you had if you had a note on that top space, can't talk today. If you had a note on the top space, what note would it be? And that would be E, right? So our 2 notes are B flat and E flat. Now, do you think that the key that we're in is E flat? Well, it isn't, unfortunately. Now, do you think that the key might be E natural since we're going up to the last flat and up 1? No, I told you that only works for sharps. So here's how it works for flats. Are you ready? It's going to blow your mind. You go to the flat all the way to the right, E flat, just like we did with the sharps. And then what I want you to do is go to the flat next to that flat, one to the left, right? So we have E flat, it's the one all the way to the right, and then we only have 2 flats. So the other flat is going to be B flat, right? I want you to play B flat. And guess what? That is the answer. So with flats, you go to the flat all the way at the end to the right, and then you go 1 before that, and that's just your answer. Seriously. Let's do actually 2 more because I want to make a good point on one of these. And that is, actually, I want to answer the question is, what if you only have 1 flat? Because I said you go to the last flat and you go to the one before, but we're not going to answer that question just yet. Oh, it's been giving you the answers the whole time. I didn't even realize. Anyway, we can still figure this one out, right? So what you do is we have 6 flats, B, E, A, D, G, and C. You go to the flat right before C flat, which is G flat, and hey, that is your answer. Now, I said, what if you only have 1 flat in your key signature, right? It's B flat. So how do you go to the one before the last flat if there's only 1? Well, here, are you ready for this? This trick is going to give you existential, no, I'm just kidding. It's not going to do anything to you existentially. The trick is this, though. It's going to blow your mind is what I'm trying to tell you. The trick is this, okay, with this one flat. Are you ready for this? The trick is you have to memorize it. I know, it's crazy. So here's how you memorize it. The key with one flat, B flat, is this. It's F. Did you hear that? The one with one flat, B flat, it's the key of F. And that's what you just got to remember it. And that's all. So you may be asking, Tim, do you need to practice key signatures? Yes, you do. I recommend doing 10 key signature practice examples each time you practice reading music as part of your daily practice routine. And you can use the musictheory.net website. They have a practice section for key signatures. The next one might seem a little odd, but it's ear training. What is ear training? Well, ear training is being able to hear certain things by ear and then being able to reproduce them on the piano. And one place I would start is being able to hear the difference between major chords and minor chords. So before we were talking about triad chords, and there are two different types I would start out with, which are major triads, sounding bright and happy, and minor triads, sounding dark and sad. Now I'm just going to play a chord at random, and you're going to have to tell me what you think it is. I'm actually going to do this so you can't see the exact notes that I'm hitting. Otherwise, you might be able to cheat if you know them by sight. But here we go. Bright and happy or dark and sad? I would say bright and happy. What about, ooh, it sounded dark and sad to me. So getting the difference between those two chords can be quite easy. So what you want to do is once you practice a bunch, I would do maybe 5 per day, just major and minor, I would start to add in these two different types of chords, which are diminished, which sounds very tense, like that, and then augmented, which also sounds tense. These ones are tricky, but it has more of a, I would say more of like a mysterious type of sound as opposed to, so there's diminished, and there's augmented. You can hear though, diminished, the notes are a little closer together, and augmented, they're a little bit further apart. So I'm going to play one of the 4 chords, major, minor, augmented, or diminished, and you're going to have to tell me which one I'm playing. Are you ready? We should do it this way. Ready? Ooh, what do you think? Let's do process of elimination. It can't be major, right? Because major would be, and this is. Now, we know it's one of the darker sounding chords. So the other question I have to ask you is, does it sound just sad? Or does it sound tense and scary? Well, it sounds tense and scary to me. Here's what it would be if it was just sad. Just a slight difference. You can hear that this has a little bit more crunch to it. So therefore, the chord I am playing is F diminished chord. Now let me play another one. You might not know these from sight. I think this might be okay. Here, I'll block it. What do you think? Definitely process of elimination. Do you think it's major or minor? Not quite. It's a little bit too tense for either of those. Do you think that the notes sound really close together? Or maybe a little bit further apart, do you think? Or does it sound scary, or does it sound mysterious? So it's really, we're choosing between diminished or augmented, and the answer is augmented, because the diminished chord would sound a little bit closer together and just has that extra crunch factor. So you want to practice the difference between major, minor, diminished, and augmented, and of course you can practice them over on musictheory.net. And if you scroll down, you'll see that there's a chord ear training part in the ear training section. I want you to click on that. Now this is very important. I want you to click on the little gear again, which is right up here in the top right. You click on it, and I want you to just select major, minor, diminished, or augmented at first. And actually, you might even want to just start out with major or minor first. Get those two down, and then try all 4. But let's give it a try real quick. All right, let's listen to it. What do you think? Do you think it sounds, let's do process of elimination. Do you think it sounds happy? I don't think so. So it's definitely not major, right? And it sounds kind of scary to me, so it's not going to be minor either. And I'm going to go with diminished. It was diminished. So if you get it right, it will glow green. If you get it wrong, it will glow red and you'll have to try again. So you want to practice 10 of these chord ear training examples. There is more to ear training. Let me know in the comments if you would like a whole lesson on ear training. I could certainly do that. There's a lot more with intervals and things like that, but the chords is definitely where you want to start. And you may even be wondering, how does this have to do, or what does this have to do with reading music? Well, if you get good at ear training, being able to hear the difference between those chords, you'll be able to double check and make sure that you're playing the right chords on the piano. So if you're supposed to be playing a major chord at a certain point, it sounds minor, you know something's wrong. There's only one more part of our routine that we need to talk about, but remember, we're going to do the challenge where we go through the whole routine together real quick, and we're going to see if you can beat me. But for now, we're talking about sight reading. Sight reading is being able to look at a piece of music from sight and be able to play it the first time, or a section of music. And here are some quick tips to make sight reading a little bit easier. Tip number one is to find a section of music or a whole piece that is slightly below your current playing level. So if you're currently playing Beethoven sonatas or something like that, maybe you want to start sight reading with something like this. If you are reading music that currently looks like this, you maybe want to do something like, I don't know, like find some nursery rhymes to learn. I always like piano. Makingmusicfun.net is a really good resource for finding really easy pieces to play. But for now, this is something more in line with what I would sight read. Here's another tip for you. Sight read slower than what you would normally play it. Sight reading isn't any kind of race, and the idea is to get from beginning to end with as few mistakes as you possibly can. Another tip is to actually analyze the line of music or whatever you're doing before you even start playing. I would look out for time signature. So we're common time 4/4. I would look out for any key signatures, don't see any, or maybe any sharps or flats, any accidentals in the middle of the piece. And I don't see any. And then what I would do is I would finally play it and I would go nice and slow. Like I said, the whole goal is to get from beginning to end with as little mistakes as possible. And when you do it, you don't have to talk at the same time. It'll make it even easier for you. And then one other tip I have for you as I'm playing this is please, please, please pay attention to the correct fingering, because that will set up your fingers in the right place. If you ignore the fingering, it's going to make things even tougher. And an additional tip is I would sight read each example once as a genuine sight read, and then another time just to go through and correct as many mistakes as you can, because you probably will make a couple mistakes. And I always find it's really useful to go back and just correct as many as you can rather than just moving on to the next one all the time. Now, here's the thing. You want to practice. I would do only like 1 or 2 sight reading examples as part of this routine, but you want to make sure that you do it every time you practice. This is like the most important part. But you don't need to do 10 of them. I think 1 or 2 lines is just fine. Okay, it's the moment you've all been waiting for. It's the moment I promised you in the beginning, because we're through the practice routine. But remember what I said, that we're going to go through it together at the end. And we're going to see if you can get the answers before me. And even if you can't, it's okay. It's a fun challenge, and it gives us an opportunity to really solidify what we learned today. Are you ready for it? So here's what we're going to do. We're going to shorten it a little bit. We're going to do 5 treble, 5 bass, 5 grand staff, 5 intervals, 5 ledger lines, 5 chords. Then we're going to do 5 key signatures and 5 like ear training chords. Are you ready? Here we go. Ready, set, go. This one's an F right here. This one's a B right there. This one's an E right here. What do you think? This one's an F right there. One more. This one's in A. Oops, missed it right there. Now it's bass clef time. Ready, set, go. B, C, E, D, There you go. What do you think? A. Hopefully you're able to beat me on that last one. I'm not sure. Now we're doing grand staff. Ready, set, go. This one's an F. Ooh, what do you think? This one's a G. What do you think? C. D. G. Okay, it's intervals now. Ready, set, go. 6. 3rd. 5th. 7th. 6th. Now we're getting tricky. So this time we're doing grand staff again, but we are doing ledger lines. But some of them may still be on the staff, just to kind of mix it all up. Ready, set, go. This one is a B. Let's see, this one is an E. This one, oops, there's the answer, F. Oh, what do you think that, oh, that we started with that one. That was B. Okay, last one. C. Okay, hopefully you're hanging in there, or at least this is good practice for you. We still have 5 chords, 5 key signatures, and then some ear training. Are you ready for the 5 chords? Ready, set, go. Okay, we're either doing major triad or major 7th. This one's, I think this is pretty easy actually, but this is what we were doing earlier. So is this a 7th chord or a triad, do you think? 7th. Can you play it on the piano? Nailed it. That's obviously what you think. A 7th. Now, I want you to answer this too, because these are too easy. Do you think that this is in root position, or do you think this is in some kind of inversion? And if it's in some kind of inversion, what inversion do you think that it is? Well, let's take a look here. So remember what I said. When you have a stacked 3rd on top, you have the 5th here, and then you have this 2nd in the middle. If you remember back when we were talking about 7ths, this is going to be in 2nd inversion, I believe, because it'll be a C major 7th chord. You're inverting it once, inverting it twice. Major 7th. Oh, what do you think? A triad. Hopefully you got that before me. Oh, what do you think? It's a 7th chord? No, it's a triad, but is it in some kind of inversion? Yes. Now, what inversion do you think that it's in? And it is, of course, in 1st inversion, because it has the spacing towards the top. See, I told you that that would come in handy. So I know this one wasn't as much of a challenge, because it's pretty obvious what the 2 answers are. But there's more to cover. Here we go. We still have to do key signatures. Ready, set, go. Okay, what do you think? It's got flats, A flat major. Nailed it. What do you think? 2 sharps, D major. I'll give you a little more time for these next ones if you're new to this. Oh, come on, we just did that one. A flat major. What do you think? Give you a little more time on this one. Remember the 2 flats, you go to the one before, and that of course is going to be B flat. All right, G. All right, I'm going to bring the heat with this next one. Are you ready? I'm going to answer this as fast as I possibly can. Oh, E. F. Remember, you got to memorize that one. One more. D flat. All right, I got them all right. Hopefully you did too. We are going to do some chords. We're going to do 5 of these ear training chords. And then I have a special tip for you at the end that's really going to tie everything together. Anyway, are you ready? Ready, set, go. So here's the first one. Sounded pretty major to me. Well, let's listen to this one again. So that one, it's definitely not major, right? That one's minor. So what's this one? Minor. Ooh. Another minor. Oh, what's this one? One more time. That one, geez, I always get augmented and diminished a little bit mixed up. It was diminished. Okay, let's do one more. It's either, geez, now these are starting to sound all similar. Minor? It was minor. Okay, good, good. One thing I want to point out, hopefully you did okay with that, is especially when hearing them from this tinny kind of laptop speakers, it's a little bit hard to hear the difference. Also, I do want to mention, once you start practicing a lot of these, my piano teacher always told me it was like smelling perfumes, where if you smell like a bunch of smells all at once, your brain starts to like kind of collide them all together. So there's that type of an effect. So that will happen to you too, even as you get better at this. Just letting you know. So how did you do? Were you able to keep up with me? If you were, that's great. I gave you a couple seconds extra on some of those answers, but that's okay. Maybe someday we'll have a real challenge for real. I wanted to make it challenging, but not impossible. So hopefully you're able to keep up. If not, don't worry about it. Just keep working on this stuff. I know that it could be new for a lot of you guys, but let's get on to our final tip to wrap everything up. Okay, I lied. I actually have 3 practice tips, and then I have the final tip. The 3 practice tips are this. It's real quick. I'm going to rattle them off. Number 1, this routine should only take maybe 10 minutes or so of your total practice section. If you are finding it's taking longer, that might be okay at first, because some of these might take you longer to get through at first, but over time you should be able to get through them like piece by piece pretty quick. And if, like I said, if it takes you a lot of time at first, don't worry about it. Tip number 2 is, at first you want to aim for accuracy, but over time you want to start aiming for speed. So remember, in the beginning of the lesson, I told you to at first give yourself 10 seconds to answer each one. And then once you get good at that, I want you to give your 5 seconds to answer each one, and then 3. So it's already built into the practice routine. And then lastly, and then I have the final tip, remember. This practice tip is to practice this routine every time you practice at the piano. You want to master this stuff like the back of your hand, and by doing so, spending this little bit of extra time up front, you will be able to learn pieces and read music 10 times faster. I'm not even kidding you. It might take you a little time to get there, but you will get there. In this lesson, we covered a lot of things you need to practice in order to read music 10 times faster. There's a couple of the smaller granular details on note reading strategies that we kind of skimmed over for this lesson. And I also promised you in the beginning of the lesson that I'd link you to a lesson at the end to catch you all up. Well, here it is. This is how to read music in one easy lesson. It's going to teach you how to read music from the ground up to make sure that you aren't missing out on any important topics. You want to watch this right here. It's been your piano teacher, Tim, here. Thanks for coming, and I'll see you next time.